Tonight, could the worst of COVID be over? With cases dropping, a focus on how GPs recover. A plan to ease their load with more pharmacists and physios.
We're now getting out of the worst of it, touch as all the wood he can here, and I think we're beginning to see improvements within the system, but it's going to take years for the NHS to fully recover.
Also making the headlines, a crackdown on cowboy car parking firms. Motorists are to get greater protection from aggressive debt collection and unreasonable fees.
To sport, and the SFA and home nations launch a joint bid to host Euro 2028.
And one of Scotland's leading art centres celebrates 50 years of McRoberts magic. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Scotland is now through the worst of the Omicron wave after the most intense period in the history of the NHS. That's according to the Health Secretary. After 2 years of upheaval due to COVID, Hamza Yousaf insists the focus is now firmly on recovery, with more pharmacists and physiotherapists to work in GP surgeries.
Coronavirus cases have fallen to some of the lowest levels in months, but with a mammoth treatment backlog and a declining workforce, many doctors feel rebuilding the service will be slow and scattered. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
Having had 2 hip replacements, Anne often suffers from pain. After speaking to her nurse practitioner in Dunblane, she was referred directly to a physiotherapist rather than having to see a GP first.
And that was all done within 2 days, 3 days. Whereas if I had gone to a GP, I would have had to wait longer. But it's been much quicker. Everything's under one roof and it's been so quick.
So I'm going to have a look in this ear if that's okay.
Because Anne's GP is one of many practices across Scotland with in-house physios, mental health nurses and pharmacists, staff here say doctors' workload has been reduced, freeing up more time to focus on complex diagnoses.
But for some people, face-to-face is really, really important. And I think having people in a local setting within local communities, it means that we can actually do things quicker. We can actually do things to the right practitioner. The
Health Secretary says expanding GP services like this one are an integral part of our recovery from COVID, with £82 million being made available as part of a 4-year fund to improve patient services.
We're beginning to see improvements within the system, but it's going to take years for the NHS to fully recover. The physios I've spoken to today, the pharmacists I've spoken to today, they work as part of that team. And so, yes, absolutely increasing that workforce is going to be a crucial part of our recovery in the future.
In and out. And that workforce could come from here. These are first-year physiotherapy students at Queen Margaret University.
I'm really excited about it because I think that it helps us connect with the patients much quicker. It gives us an opportunity to treat them on a more person-centred case.
We're in a good-sized class here, but I know that it can be quite competitive, so the more positions that they are available for us, the much better it is for us.
It's great news if it increases access to physiotherapy, decreases physiotherapy waiting lists, and potentially decreases time that people will have spending on waiting lists. It will mean that there's better outcomes for patients.
But staff are facing a mounting treatment backlog.
It's no secret that the workforce is really on the decline, and we need to encourage young trainees to continue with general practice. Accessing a GP across the country could just look slightly differently, but we have never been closed, and the workforce is tired.
Whether it's a phone or face-to-face appointment, access is a mixed picture across Scotland.
The rule, I find it very difficult, especially now. I found it difficult before COVID, but especially now.
Getting through to them has been quite hard because I've been having to phone at 8 o'clock and then just keep pressing the button until I get it eventually.
No problem with our doctors. They deal with us when we need it.
Although COVID cases are falling, with just over 5,800 reported today, for now the health service remains in a fragile state. Laura Alderman, STV News.
A new medication for children and adults with a rare genetic condition has been approved for NHS use in Scotland. Until recently, older people living with spinal muscular atrophy have been without any drug to slow the progression of the disease.
Due to advancements in research, 3 treatments are now available. The latest, risdiplam, can be taken at home. Our chief reporter, Sharon Frew, has been speaking to some who were given early access to the drug who believe it's slowly changing their lives.
Joan Turner retired last April. Around the same time, the 55-year-old said she received an added bonus she never expected: early access to a new drug called risdiplam.
It's like Christmas, birthdays, everything came at once. It was just terrific. A phone call out the blue that you never ever thought you would have got, and suddenly here we have a wee bit of hope.
Spinal muscular atrophy is a rare genetic condition which affects nerve cells. It can lead to a loss of movement and difficulties breathing and swallowing. Risdiplam boosts the level of protein in the body, which helps muscle movement. Joan has been taking the syrup daily at home for the last 10 months.
How about that?
There I'm moving my hand up and down. I would never have been able to have done that. But I go to lean over for something and I go, gosh, I've just picked that up. And at times I used to think, am I imagining it? But no, 100%.
The Scottish Medicines Consortium has now approved risdiplam for use on the NHS after studies found it improved motor function in patients with SMA type 1, 2 and 3. The drug manufacturer Roche says today's decision has been achieved by working with the consortium and the SMA community.
It's another option for children and it's the first option for adults. So for adults in particular, like myself, it's extremely exciting. It should be life-changing for many of the small number of people living with SMA in Scotland.
It's the third treatment for SMA in 3 years. Shona's 13-year-old daughter was the first child in Scotland to take risdiplam.
Nusinersen was approved and now risdiplam. We have got the other gene therapy medication as well. So, things are moving so quickly in the world of neuromuscular conditions, but especially so in SMA. And I'm really hopeful that this rapid change in research and drug development can be rolled out across other rare diseases as well.
When she was 6 weeks old, Izzy from Murray was one of the youngest children in the world to be given the gene therapy Zolgensma. The last 9 months have been a learning experience for her parents.
But she's able to sit up on her own. I mean, SMA with type 1 sitting up on their own, that's almost non-existent in the natural course of the condition. Holding their heads, that's not going to happen. So it is a complete miracle in that sense. It's not a cure.
There is still the physio, the exercises, the monitoring.
The last decade has been a complete game changer for children and people living with SMA.
Izzy's parents are adding their support to calls for screening for SMA from birth. With the number of treatments now increasing, they believe earlier diagnosis is the next step forward. Sharon Frew, STV News.
We're getting more of an idea about how much the cost of living crisis is going to bite for families across Scotland. Research released today has found almost half have found their finances become more difficult in the past year. And this concern, the problems are mounting, with particular concern about the impact on mental health. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
This research has been carried out for a coalition of charities working with children and families across Scotland. They commissioned it amid growing concern that more households have been finding it hard to make ends meet over the past year. Overall, 46% of families said it was more difficult to pay the bills than it was a year earlier. Very strikingly, for those households bringing in between £26,000 and £32,000 a year, the median income, the middle, where you'd expect most to be falling within that, 73% said it was harder than before. And looking at it by family type, it was single-parent families who were the most affected group, with 58% of them saying things were tighter.
I think parents and families are already struggling. The mental health problems of both parents and children are rising, and that is not unconnected trying to live your life wondering if you're going to be able to put food on the table. You're only heating one room because that's all you can afford to do. Of course, that's stressful, and it's only getting worse.
We've heard a lot recently about the rising cost of food, and there's now been a warning worse is to come, with the boss of Tesco trailing potential 5% rises in the coming months. Last week, we told you about the huge increase in gas and electricity bills on the way. In the days ahead, local councils will be preparing their budgets and setting tax rises. They're tipped to go up by around 3%. And national insurance, we already know, is increasing by 1.25% from the 1st of April. Later this week, on Thursday, Scotland's Economy Secretary will set out how she's going to use the £290 million coming from the Treasury to help tackle the cost of living. But that, of course, can only go so far. Amid already rising costs and signs of more to come, a landscape where inflation is high and wages are squeezed, a lot of us are going to feel quite a bit poorer.
Gordon Cree. Other stories across Scotland, and an SNP MP who suffered a near-fatal brain hemorrhage has returned to Westminster in person for the first time in almost 2 years. Amy Callaghan underwent 2 life-saving surgeries after collapsing at her home in June of 2020. The Eastern Bartonshire MP travelled to London to ask a question on behalf of a constituency member who had suffered a stroke.
A 21-gun salute has taken place at Edinburgh Castle to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The shots were fired at midday to celebrate 70 years since the monarch took the throne. A series of events are planned for throughout the year to mark the milestone.
House prices in the UK have hit a record high. In Scotland, the average price is up £16,000 on the year before, with property costing on average £193,000. However, the Halifax House Price Index expects the market to slow considerably this year as the cost of living soars.
Now, motorists are to receive greater protection from aggressive debt collection and unreasonable fees through a cap to private parking fines. The UK government's new parking code of practice will crack down on what they call cowboy private car parking firms.
Ministers say charges will be cut by up to 50%, and companies not following the new code will face penalties. Brandon Cook reports.
Around 22,000 of these charges are sent to drivers across the UK every single day. Letters sometimes threatening court action, demanding large sums of money for alleged parking breaches on private land.
Approximately 3 years ago, outside a travel lodge, it was a private car park, and they threatened me with £100 fine.
They tried to charge me £80, saying I'd been there for about 2 hours. I argued against it because they hadn't followed the rules themselves. They had a small sign about 3 inches square.
I had lots of letters before, and they never give up.
At the moment, private parking companies abide by rules set by 2 trade bodies. But the UK government say it's time for that to change, pointing to a multitude of problems like high fees, unclear signage and difficult appeals processes. The solution Westminster has devised is a new code of conduct applying in Scotland, England and Wales. It will slash the amount private parking firms can charge as a fine by up to 50% in the majority of cases, a ban on additional debt collection fees, a 10-minute grace period before a late fine can be issued, and a requirement for parking firms to clearly display pricing and terms and conditions. So what do people think of the change?
I think it's not before time, to be honest. £100 fine for a few minutes parking in some cases was absolutely ridiculous.
Hopefully it will force them to stick to whatever rules are there.
I think because it can just get a bit out of hand, can't it, when the amounts keep getting put up. So yeah, that would be good if it's capped at 50.
I didn't think actually there should be penalties. The town belongs to the people, not to these crooks.
Some drivers were getting £100 fines for putting a very, very minor keying error into a ticket machine. Others were getting £100 fines for simply returning to their vehicle just sometimes seconds later than when the ticket expired. So it's absolutely right that we have a much fairer system, and the RAC has campaigned long and hard for this.
But while the new code has been widely welcomed, the British Parking Association, one of the trade bodies which represent companies that own car parks like this one, say a cap on fines will result in poorer standards and less people following the rules.
We feel that this is going to cause some congestion, that people aren't going to find spaces, and that people are going to take a risk more than they would before, because they might think that £25, which is the reduced rate for a parking charge, is okay. They'll accept that. So they're going to take a risk and potentially take up spaces. And the person this is going to affect most is the compliant motorist.
Firms will have to follow the code by at least 2023, a turn in the right direction for many, a bumpy road ahead for others.
Well, let's go to Brandon. And Brandon, this new code of practice applies to private parking companies, but how will it affect individual drivers?
Yes, John. Well, this code of practice is really telling owners of private car parks to really pull their socks up in the way that they conduct their business. When you park in a private car park, you're effectively entering a contract of agreement with the landowner. With that, there should be rules displayed on a sign and ways you should be told how to follow those rules, and indeed the landowner should be is allowed to seek reparations if you're to break those rules. But it's always been a grey area here in Scotland as to whether parking fines are even apply here in this country. The long and short of that answer is they do, but it's a civil matter, not a criminal one. So you could be taken to civil court over it, but that occurrence is fairly rare. Now, many can, of course, decide not to pay those fines. They simply cite that it's too expensive, and it's hoped that this new code can help address that. Parking companies have until the end of 2023 to follow the new guidance, otherwise they face effective closure by being cut off from the DVLA's vehicle database.
Brandon, thank you for that. Well, it was quite a weekend of sport. Here's Raman.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
We'll get to the weekend's action shortly, but first, the SFA will hold talks with the Scottish Government over the potential redevelopment of Hampden as part of its joint bid to stage Euro 2028. Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland have abandoned plans to together host the 2030 World Cup in favour of the Euros, following a feasibility study which showed there are more financial benefits in staging the latter. 4 matches at Euro 2020 took place at Hampden last year. Ange Postecoglou and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst heaped praise on their players after Celtic and Rangers recorded emphatic wins yesterday. Tom Rogic scored twice at Fir Park as the league leaders thumped Motherwell 4-0. At Ibrox, Alfredo Morelos grabbed a brace as the champions thrashed Hearts 5-0. Rangers host Hibs on Wednesday, Celtic are away to Aberdeen. Now, after making his first team debut last month, Rangers midfielder Alex Lowry says the last few weeks have been crazy but very enjoyable. The midfielder, who has been at the club since the age of 10, admits he's learned a lot being with the senior squad.
It's been crazy, but it's something I've always wanted to do, so it was part of a, we'll call it, plan from when I first joined the club years ago, so it's obviously brilliant to make my debut and obviously score as well. Yeah, it's been crazy, but it's been very enjoyable. It's different to my normal day with the youth team, but it's been really enjoyable, and obviously I've learned a lot of playing with top class players.
To rugby, and Ben White says scoring a debut try for Scotland was the best 10 minutes of his life as he helped kick off their Six Nations campaign with a Calcutta Cup victory. Gregor Townsend's side travelled to play Wales in Cardiff this weekend, a venue they've not won at in 20 years. Sheila McLaren reports.
There's plenty for Scotland new boy Ben White to smile about after a weekend he'll never forget. Brought on while Ali Price had a head injury assessed, he lit up Murrayfield with a try minutes later before promptly taking his place back on the bench.
I think I walked off. I just saw one of the lads. I wasn't. I was like,
Best 10 minutes of my life. Incredible. I think, if anything, actually getting on like that was good, because it sort of took away the nerves and the angst of waiting till like the last 20 minutes and so on. So just to be thrown in at the deep end was almost like a good thing. You just go on and do your job.
Saturday's triumph was hard fought. White's try was one of the few forays into the England 22, and Eddie Jones' side bounced back to take the lead in the second half. But a late penalty try, followed by a kick from Finn Russell, gave Gregor Townsend's men the lead. And although they were put to the test late on, they stood firm to clinch victory. Wales are up next as Scotland go in search of a long-awaited triumph at the Principality Stadium.
It's a huge win, but it means nothing if we don't go to Wales and back it up. So we've got to go to Wales and try and get a result there, which we know is going to be a real tough task.
While fans are starting to get excited, the players and coaching staff are keeping things on an even keel. And heroes from Grand Slam teams of the past think that's the way it needs to be.
It's one game out of 5. They've got to keep going. As Scott said, this is the next big 80 minutes and deal with what's coming after that, at that time. But let's not get carried away. We've had one victory. We did the same last year with victory over England in the opening game, and there's another 4 matches to go.
Jamie Ritchie will miss the clash in Cardiff after being stretchered off during the second half, suffering damage in his hamstring and groin area.
In curling, Team GB's all-Scottish mixed doubles duo will have to settle for a third-place playoff against Sweden tomorrow, as they were narrowly beaten by Norway this afternoon. As Ivana Holland now reports, Scots Jennifer Dodds and Bruce Mowat failed to take advantage of an early lead.
It made for tense and nervy watching as Team GB bid for a spot in the mixed doubles finals. The Scots were in control at 4-2 halfway through the match, but a Norwegian power play meant they took control and didn't let up, seeing out the game 6-5.
And it will. That's a nice shot.
Defeat didn't dampen the spirits at this rink in Edinburgh. Jen Dodds and Bruce Mowat remain inspirations to the youngsters who see their future at an Olympic Games if they can continue to put in the dedication.
It just depends on how much work we choose to put in, how committed we are. Obviously the pathway's there with all the funding that we've got these days. So if we start at the bottom, you've just got to work your way up and really work hard for it.
Curling is enjoyed by around 10,000 people in Scotland, but the Winter Olympics always provides an opportunity to see an increase in participation.
I think that junior area is where we would really like some growth and getting more schools participating in the sport, but also it's perfect sport for those maybe going into retirement wanting a new hobby. So we're just hoping to grow our numbers across the board and just get as many people on the ice enjoying it and keeping fit. It's a great form of exercise.
Either there's something in the ice or recent investment has led to Scotland's continued delivery of the world's top curlers.
The top athletes in Scotland and Great Britain are all full-time, all funded by the National Lottery, so they don't need to do any other work. They can just concentrate fully on their sport and get better at curling, and it's resulted in great performances and hopefully a few medals in Beijing. So.
Today's duo will face Sweden for the bronze medal match at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. In skiing, teenager Kirsty Muir has qualified for the Big Air final, which will take place on Tuesday. Ivana Holland, STV News.
And that is all your sport tonight, folks. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Philip has the weather, and there may be snow in the air.
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, throughout today we've seen this warm front crossing the country, introducing this milder sector of air. So throughout today we've predominantly seen rain showers. Overnight though, we've got a cold front sinking southwards across the country, reintroducing this bitterly cold Arctic air from the north. So we are likely to see a few more snow showers over the next couple of days. Wednesday night into Thursday, we need to keep an eye on this deep area of low pressure to the north of the country, as that looks set to bring with it some stormy conditions. But by Friday, we've got high pressure building from the southwest once again, so it looks like a drier, more settled end to the week. Back to just now though, and like I said, overnight we're seeing this cold front moving south-eastwards, and that's bringing with it, to begin with, a more organised band of rain that could be quite heavy at times. Behind it though, we will see a mixture of clearer skies and still 1 or 2 showers. Temperature-wise, not dropping too far, lows of 4 or 5 degrees Celsius thanks to a bit of a breeze and the showers, so we're not likely to see a widespread frost. For tomorrow, we've got a mixture of sunny spells and those showers continuing to pile in from the west, and those will be falling increasingly as snow as the freezing level drops through the course of the day. Temperature-wise, highs of 8 or 9 degrees Celsius. Looking ahead to Wednesday, a similar looking day. The best of any drier or brighter conditions will be in the east. Further west though, further wintry showers with highs of 6. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, Stirling's McRoberts Art Centre is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with a range of events, shows and exhibitions to mark the special occasion in style.
Yes, Laura Boyd visited the revered centre today to find out all about its history and meet some of the people who've worked and performed there.
And at the centre of the complex, the already celebrated McRoberts Centre. Conceived from the start as a centre of the arts for town and gown alike, a sort of cultural no man's land where everyone has a chance of enjoying music, drama, cinema.
Cinema including the Braveheart premiere, which took place at Stirling University's McRobert Arts Centre back in 1995 and saw the likes of Mel Gibson and a host of stars enjoy the freedom of the campus. One of many standout moments in the centre's 50-year history, a place which holds fond memories for many, not least the university's alumni.
Well, I was a student here back in the day, in the 90s, and my first connection with McRobert would have been going to see cinema. Reservoir Dogs had just come out, and there was this kind of hype about it, but nobody really knew that much about it. Went to see that, and that changed my entire relationship to cinema. And then gradually seeing plays. So I saw Brian Cox in The Master Builder in the McRobert Centre, I think in 1994.
Does it bring back special memories when you come in here?
I mean, the sort of career that I have now, I think I owe in a large part to the McRobert Centre. McRobert means a lot to me.
Someone else who loves it here is Matilda Hall, who began working at Stirling University in the 1960s. She's returned with her specially curated collection, A Passion for Art, as part of McRobert's 50th year.
From the word go in McRobert, there were exhibitions. There are pictures from the university collection, specially to show how broad the collection is and to help everybody within Stirling University to really appreciate what they have.
The McRobert doors are open for everyone, with their pantomimes legendary throughout Scotland. But before its return, the team are more determined than ever to make people smile.
So there's a whole host of comedy, Friends, the musical parody, really good stuff that you can come and just let go and have fun.
The centre is also backing Stirling's bid to become City of Culture 2025, which they'd be sure to be at the heart of.
We're keeping everything crossed. It would mean so much to Stirling, and I think a lot to Scotland too.
Here's to the next 50 years. Laura Boyd, STV News.
Some good memories from the McRobert Centre.
Indeed. Well, that is all from us tonight. We're back tomorrow.
Good night.
Bye-bye.